Alright, good evening everyone. Finally managed to get through all the technical difficulties so I can record how to play Grimmagstone. I know I promised a while back that I would make videos about how to farm every single parallel world boss. So far I've only made one, so this is the second video. So going in, I decided to pick Infernal 1 because this would be a difficulty where I would actually have something to show you guys. If you're playing by yourself and you know that you're not very strong, obviously you don't want to go in on Infernal 1. It's really the same thing, just, you know, the damage is higher, the monsters have more HP, maybe a few more talents. So that's the only reason I'm picking Infernal 1. So if you're playing solo and you know you're squishy, you probably want to put your couple of taunts on. So here I've picked Mind Control and Guardian. So that should help me just stay alive. I always like closing that leaderboard bar just because it gets in the way. Now my first champion here that I see is a fire champion, so you want to be careful with those as you're approaching and make sure you either A, stay away, or B, stun them. So there we go. Now for this first little part of Grimmagstone, when you go in, it's pretty much just the basic, you know, clear your monsters. But here's something that I really want to drive home, and a lot of new players don't seem to think about this sort of thing, which is target selection. So in terms of prioritizing which targets to attack first, it always is, you know, a champion or boss, whatever is there that has a big circle around its feet. That's the most important target. After that, most people have no idea what to target, so they just target, you know, whatever's in front of me is whatever I hit, which works, but then it's also not the most efficient. So the most efficient is, of course, to attack any healers or summoners first, followed by any ranged attackers, and last of all are the non-range. So right here you see a whole bunch of skeletons, and there's an archer, so I target that one. The Nefertari happens to be right behind, which is great because the Nefertari is a summoner, so you want to kill that as soon as possible. The other thing is that this is a trap here, so that it continuously spawns mobs for several waves. If you're not able to stand in the middle of it and kill everything because you can't take the damage, you can do what I'm doing, which is I walked in, I triggered the trap, then I walked back out in order to fight them on the edge. So this limits the number of monsters that I actually have to deal with at any one time, and prevents me from dying. So right here you see the Cold Skeleton Warrior. So that was the whole point of all of these waves. You just needed to kill that one guy. You could actually ignore the rest of the monsters if you really wanted to, but then you don't quite get the points for the leaderboard. And another solid piece of advice I can give for any spell weaver out there is to never ever mind control any of the healers or summoners, because they're always going to be the first target that your team's going to prioritize killing. So if you mind control it, you've basically just thrown your entire team off. Some of them might have wasted, you know, their best skills, and it's a target now that they suddenly can't hit. So mind control is always on weak monsters, so for example, you know, the archer or maybe these skeletons, but don't mind control the Nefertari. So this champion here is a shield champion, and if you noticed, I stayed far back from it at first, so that when it casts the bubble, the shield bubble, it's all the way back here, and the champion doesn't get the benefit of that bubble. It was outside of that bubble the entire time. So that's also something that you can do, because if you don't have a lot of damage, it gets quite frustrating to attack something when it's standing inside the bubble. Okay, so there's a Nefertari. Oh, there's another Nefertari. You want to prioritize those first, then you get the little archers. And then last of all, this one. This one's just a berserker champion, so relatively straightforward. Just stun it once in a while just to prevent it from going berserk. Now as you're going up here, you'll quickly realize that there are a lot of monsters up here. So, you know, if you just dive right in, sometimes it can be pretty deadly. So what you can do is you can walk close and then back off a little. And when you do that, you pull all of these archers with you, and occasionally a few other small monsters. So you can kill those, and then when you come up, there's now a lot fewer monsters to deal with, so you're not overwhelmed. Now that said, this guy does summon a lot of archers and quite quickly, so you want to be careful. You don't actually need to kill those archers with the circle around their feet. They don't drop anything good, so you could have just ignored them if you wanted to. Now going into the second map, you have 4 targets here, so 3 of them are Grimmags. Grimmags originally were coded as world bosses, so they're no longer considered a world boss, but they still have certain properties that world bosses have. So for example, I can't stun it. My slow, which the frost wind would come with a frost effect that would slow things down, doesn't work on it either. And my guardian taunt doesn't work on the Grimmag either. Now that said, even though the taunt doesn't work, I can use it to physically block any of the fireballs that are coming. Now if you don't have guardian or equivalent for your class for whatever reason, you can just dodge those fireballs. They're actually super easy to dodge because they move so slowly. So you just have to do this 3 times with the 3 Grimmags. This is Grimmag number 2. And then here's Grimmag 3. Okay, now this last guy that we face here is a Dragon Knight. So he can be quite tricky, especially if your team goes in unprepared. So don't be that person who goes rushing ahead before the rest of your team is ready, because then you probably got your entire team killed. So, you know, more or less, when you go into a party, you want to always designate one person or maybe 2 people that you follow as kind of like the leader of the pack. And if they're not moving, you should probably wait. This is not the area to just charge ahead and be like, yay, and then everybody dies. So, the 2 things to look out for, 1 is a meteor, and the 2 is a humongous purple circle that's going to appear. There it is. So you can see this diffuse purple circle around here. This is a massive AoE mind control, so don't don't summon any of your summons here. So no guardians, no trees, no turrets from dwarves, none of that stuff, because if you summon it, it gets mind control and starts attacking your teammates. And trust me, you do not want to be standing in a dwarf's turrets. Now this other one is this gigantic meteor. So there'll be 1 for every player, every summon that's on the field at that moment that's not mind controlled. So that can be a lot of meteors depending on the team composition. Please have mercy on your teammates. You know, like stun this guy, because your stuns work. And your armor break also works on him, so use your armor breaks. That way you can kill him very quickly. And then you guys won't all get hit by a lot of meteors. So we're finally at Grimmag himself. So going in, Grimmag can be thought of as a mage, a really crappy one. So he's got all the mage talents. So it's easier if I just open my skills so I can just talk about them. His primary attack is a fireball, which depending on the particular version of Grimmag that you get, he may have no burn or he may have a burning effect. So if he has a burning effect, it just means that after you get hit, you'll notice that he does another 3 ticks of damage over time. He also has a teleport, and he will teleport to whoever is either A, tanking him, or B, whoever has the highest damage if the tank loses the aggro. So in either of those cases, after he teleports, there's going to be a small fire explosion surrounding him. So if you're not able to stand in that fire explosion, which is my case here, make sure you get away from him as soon as he teleports towards you. He also has a destructor beam. That one is a red colored beam, and depending on the enchantments, he may have one where he leaves behind like a line of fire cones, and those fire cones will explode after about a second or so and deal some more fire damage. He also has a meteor, but actually he has two types of meteors. One type of meteor is purely damage, so that meteor may or may not leave a burning mark on the ground, and there will be one for every player or every summon that's on the field that he can see. So that can mean a lot of meteors if you have people who decide, oh, let's go summon our wolf pack, and there's two rangers, and suddenly, you know, you have like 15-20 meteors falling on the ground. It's just crazy. So that's the first meteor, and it's relatively straightforward, just don't stand in it. The second meteor he summons is one that actually summons some monsters. So he summons a healer for himself, which is a red guy that shoots fireballs. You always want to prioritize killing that ahead of anything else on the field. If you see that thing alive, kill it. Just kill it first. The other stuff that he summons are a bunch of small skeleton warriors. The skeleton warriors aren't that much of a threat unless you do dumb things to it. So the way I always like dealing with that one, and I always tell people this, but people for some reason just ignore what I say, I don't know why, is please do not like stand in the corner here and go, okay, I dodged a meteor, here's like 5 skeletons. Wait for the next meteor. Okay, here's another 5, now I have 10, now I have 15, now I have 20. And then at some point you run out of space to run around in your little corner, so you end up dead. Now you release a pack of 30 skeletons on the rest of your team. Don't do that, please. So the way to deal with the skeletons is to bring them over to where Grimmag is. So the rest of your teammates actually see the skeletons, and if you have a tank or if somebody is using taunt or something like their guardian, it'll be pulled towards those, and the area of effect attacks from your other skills will take them out. So you don't have to directly focus on them, you just need to get them towards where Grimmag is. That's the main focus. And the last of his skills is a mind control. Now the mind control is particularly important because most people miss this part. The mind control works on both your summons and on players themselves. So in terms of your summons, let's say I put out my guardian and he mind controls it. Well, now my guardian will start attacking me. That's, you know, pretty straightforward. That's what you think mind control usually is. Mind control also applies a debuff to the player that decreases your damage. So make sure you have something. For me, I favor using the 3-point talent on teleport called counter spell, something to remove your stuns and your debuffs, and save that for the moments that you actually need it. So I've explained all the skills, and here we go. I'm just going to do it without essences so that the fight lasts long enough for you guys to see what's going on. Grimmag always wakes up in the exact same fashion. The first skill he drops is always going to be a meteor, and of course there'll be 1 meteor for every player or thing on the field. Then he'll teleport, and then there'll be the explosion. Then there'll be a string of fireballs. This is the one with the fire cones, so you don't want to stand anywhere near those cones when they explode. Alright, so there's the mind control, and like I said, he applies a debuff that reduces your damage. And it's actually a fairly sizable damage loss, so make sure you get rid of it. Otherwise you're just wasting your time and your essences. So you saw one type of meteor, the one that leaves a burning mark. This is the other type of meteor, which you actually don't see it fall, but he summons his healer, and then he summons a whole bunch of little skeletons. So if you notice, I'm not directly attacking the little skeletons. I just focus on pulling them around where he is, so that they will eventually be killed by the AoE effect of my frozen sphere. So you could do something similar depending on what your class is. Oh, nice lag. Okay, well, that's unfortunate. Alright. So luckily, it seems like this time I'm playing without the berserk mode. So berserk mode just basically means he spams meteor and then destructor beam and meteor destructor beam repeatedly, and he does that for maybe, I don't know, 30 seconds or something like that. I never time it. when he does that, oftentimes the entire party just has to run around him in circles. That's really all that there is to do. Now, since the update R209, your guardian will actually work on him. So, you know, use him wisely. Don't use him to tank something like a destructor beam because he will die. So some of you are probably wondering, how is it that I managed to dodge all of those fireballs? Well, there's a certain time gap in between his attacks, and you will have to figure out how many attacks you can do in that time gap. So that depends on your attack speed. I have 1.967 attack speed. So for me, I can do 2 frozen spheres in the time before I have to walk, otherwise I'll be hit by a fireball. So if you have lower attack speed, you'll be only able to do fewer attacks before you have to walk. So best of luck. Unfortunately, I can't really offer better advice for any of the DKs in the guild because I don't play DK, but for all the ranged players, this is more or less how you do Grimmagstone. So best of luck, and hopefully we'll see your name on the top of the leaderboard at some point.